All right, coming live to you from high-waisted parachute pants city. Cool guy. All right, so a couple hours ago, came across this post on the fencing subreddit. Basically, some guy saying that it's early in development, but that he has corporate partners willing to back him in establishing an independent fencing league. And he's just basically gauging community receptiveness and advice and stuff here, right? And of course, you have the standard, oh, it's been tried, you know, 5 times before. It's never succeeded. There's no money in fencing, right? Which to me is the silliest kind of argument, which is like it's pragmatic and logical, or they're like, oh, don't start such a massive undertaking when there's not really a set public demand or kind of financial pool in which you can like reliably draw revenue from and stuff. But I don't know. To me, that's kind of silly because it's like there's no money in anything. When it first starts off, like why do people pay out the nose to go see people throw a football around? It's like just because at some point someone establishes a professional league, develops the sport, and convinces enough people that it's cool. So I really don't see that as being like a valid argument against. So yeah, I just kind of wanted to talk a little bit about um, fencing leagues, independent fencing leagues, and kind of where they would fit within the current fencing ecosystem, and why I think essentially that an independent fencing league is the best way to grow the sport. So just a little background on the guy who's actually attempting this. And this is given to him in his own post history. I'm not like some weirdo stalker. But his name is Tran Nguyen. He is the owner and coach of the St. Louis Fencing Club. He also started some sort of collegiate club. But yeah, so he's been fencing since 2005. He's an armor. He's founded a collegiate club, an independent club, and if we look at his kind of professional credentials, right? He's an accountant and CFO for many many years, involved in real estate and stuff. So he has the financial means and kind of the professional chops per se to really undergo something like this. And more importantly, he has the kind of clout to attract corporate sponsors and corporate backers, which is needed when establishing these sorts of things. Yeah, he also has this fencing tracker, handy dandy, very very comprehensive stat list for uh, the St. Louis Fencing Club. Okay, so not his collegiate thing, but yeah. So he's clearly passionate about the sport, very experienced, and stats are also something that I think is like really missing right now, like publicized stats. I think that's kind of the lifeblood or no, I say everything's the lifeblood, right? But it's a key and integral part of sporting communities for fans to latch onto, and kind of like just circulate discussion around. Like people love to get nerdy and crunchy over the numbers. I can only imagine, doubly so in fencing, where the average person is already, skewing a little bit more nerdy than the general populace. But yeah, so let's talk about independent fencing leagues in general. Another thing that I hear a lot when I bring up the idea of like, all right, why not have something independent of USA Fencing, like an NFL or whatever, something that's not a national governing body, but a private, right, quote unquote, a private, independent, established entity that runs its own kind of season, completely independently from the national scene, strictly domestic in America, right? And the main detraction I see from that, besides there's no money in this sport, is that before something like that can be undertaken, that there has to be more people already participating in the sport. And this inevitably kind of goes back to, oh, it's got to be in the schools. It's got to be in so many schools first, right? And I think that foundations like fencing in the schools and, fencing in the park, with Amon Blow and Daryl Homer, respectively, or, swapped them, whatever. Uh, I think those are great ideas and they're very important in introducing fencing and giving fencing exposure in marginalized communities and also just, in schools where people are not traditionally exposed to um, esoteric kind of hobbies like this, right? And so the pipeline that I hear and see a lot of people advocating for right now in terms of growing fencing as a sport is, going really hard after the schools, and then once we establish, a proper base with money and whatnot, then we can go ahead and try something like a league. This is probably my hottest fencing related take. I think it's the exact opposite. I am of a very strong, very opinionated opinion that it should be flipped and that it would be much more, it would actually be easier to get fencing into schools in the long run if there's already a professional league set up to promote and gain visibility for the sport. Because right now, imagine you go up to some sort of high school, right? And let's not pretend that like high schools just have, lots of money spare to just throw towards kind of, like I said, more esoteric, less popular athletic endeavors or whatever, athletic organizations. What kind of like how does that benefit them? Besides, everyone's like, oh well, Ivy Leagues, they love fencing. Don't you want your kids to go to Ivy Leagues? It's like that's not really convincing enough, and I'm sure that they would rather funnel any sort of money that would be required for establishing like any sort of fencing team with decent equipment size and inventory. They would much rather put that towards their academics or football team, their track team, their soccer team, whatever, right? Anything that's actually selling tickets and making the money. So it's already a hard sell to get into the high school. But if you establish fencing as this very cool, very robust, popular sport, then you can get it into the schools. So my whole thing goes back to making it aesthetically appealing, and we won't, get into it too much because I already made a whole video on that. But you guys already know kind of where my aesthetic tastes and ideas for the sport lie. So if this, hypothetical league that Tran is putting together doesn't kind of go that direction aesthetically, I think that would be a missed opportunity. But I wish him all the best. He seems like a very qualified individual, and I would love for it to succeed. If anything, just to, create a little bit of healthy competition between here and USA Fencing. Maybe they would, iron sharpens iron and all that, and we could get some really cool promotional stuff out of this. So the reason why other professional or attempts at professional fencing leagues have failed beforehand, from what I can gather, just talking to a few older coaches and then some people on Reddit and whatnot, is that one of them was like a bit of a Ponzi scheme where the athletes had to like really promote and sell their own tickets and stuff like that. And then another one, just ran into monetary issues, lack of sponsorships, and fizzled out. And again, not to harp on it too much, but what attracts sponsors, right? The if you are a brand, like what are you sponsoring a sporting event for? It's not out of the goodness of your heart, right? It's like Gatorade doesn't give a shit about being involved in soccer or NFL, right? They want eyes. They know that these are very popular sports with a lot of eyes on it. So they want to be somewhere on the field. They want to be involved somehow, right? It's free ad space. So if you have a sport like fencing, that is not really entertaining to watch as a non-fencer. Even as a fencer, it's not that entertaining to watch sometimes because of its bland presentation. Why, unless you're fucking Pissot, right? The Swedish sock brand, you really have no incentive to put money down and try to fund the sport. And to what? To gain like 600 pairs of eyes that are like kind of glazed over watching. It's not really financially uh viable for you as a brand, right? So again, not to harp on it too much, but I think that the bombastic kind of aesthetic and theming that I'm proposing would go a long way towards not only securing attention, even if it's just kind of reactionary, like some sort of like BuzzFeed article picks it up as like, whoa, look at this crazy thing. Fencing's going crazy. It's like, the sponsors don't care how you get the views. They just want to know that you're reaching people. And I think that, um, you would gain a lot of reactionary, views and eyes off that. And that would be, it wouldn't just be short term, it would be, sustained interest because once the ball gets rolling, as long as you keep it up, I think something like that would have a potential snowball, very well for us. So, got a little bit off topic there, but, so just fencing leagues in general, what would make it successful and what kind of model should it follow to not kind of fall into the same sort of pitfalls that previous ones have had, right? I've been following the, Premier Lacrosse League for a few years now. Not because I'm some big lacrosse head. I don't really care about lacrosse as a sport, but I think that they've done an excellent job in establishing a league is on a ridiculous time frame, right? It was like something like established within 8 months. Obviously, many years of conception, and formulating and stuff beforehand. It was founded by the Rabil brothers, Paul Rabil and Mike Rabil. Paul was a professional, lacrosse player within his own league, which is pretty cool. But he was a very accomplished player outside of that, and he feels basically the same way I do. He's like, I love this sport, so much, and it's a goddamn shame that there's not enough eyes on this, appreciating what the athletes do, and that the athletes that are putting in this blood, sweat, and tears, and like sacrificing, everything to be like just solely excellent at this sport and drive the sport forward. They're kind of seeing no return on that. And not that people should do it, explicitly for financial gain, right? But it's like if you're going to be driving the sport forward so much, it'd be really cool if you could make, a living off of it that allows you to focus, solely on that and not have to be like side hustling or like, kickstarting for your Olympic funds. Shout out Monica Askemet, rip. Um, but yeah, so he founded the PLL, and it's booming. It's fantastic. They're having, a very robust, coverage on ESPN Plus. You see them all over LinkedIn and stuff all the time. They're just making waves. So, let's take a look at their structure and what their league is like. So it's a small batch. Let's see, one, two, three, four, five, six, seven, eight. I can't fucking count. So it's 8 teams, right? And each team consists, an average lacrosse team has 22 to 23 players on their roster. That's a decent amount, right? It's not like huge deep benches from what I can gather. So the league is structured like this. Oh, nice. Season leaders. Do they have a full roster? Oh, perfect. Perfectly labeled. Oh wow, so these are smaller teams than I thought. Let's take a look. One, two, three, four, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So they have 12 people on their official roster. And let's even just assume, right, that they have, 8 guys in reserve, benched or whatever, just in case people get injured. So let's make a conservative estimate that there's 20 people officially signed to each team, and then there's 8 people. If I'm not idiot, 20 times 8, 160. There we go. So let's say that there's 160 people total contractually signed to this league. That is a fantastic size. So not only is it, big enough, right, that you have, a real sense of like this large community and like deep player base, but it's not too large where you get lost in it. I could see if you were a, real crosshead or whatever, this being a very palatable, easy, streamlined, league to follow. They have their stats listed here, not only individually, very detailed, for positions, but for teams, in general too over here. So lots of numbers. And again, this is something that I think Tran could really, excel in, and something that, fencing as a whole is really lacking is, standardized statistics here. People love that. Yes, back to the structure. This is a small batch league that, is really built for like the diehard fans of lacrosse. It's kind of like an all-star cast, and their championship series and their scheduling is very clearly laid out here. And it is important. It starts in June, ends sometime in late fall. This is kind of an issue that I think that fencing has right now is that our season, quote unquote, doesn't really have a clear break for people to start to miss fencing or to get excited about it again, right? Let's start in January, right? January knack. We basically have knacks all the way up until oh yeah, yeah. So yeah, even more so. We have knacks, then we have JOs in February, knack, 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 boom, summer nationals and then Nax until January again. So not only is this extremely busy, and that's just the domestic kind of circuit, right? Forget about it once you start throwing in the Grand Prix and the World Cups and then the World Champs at the end of the year, right? There's never kind of a breath, and it leads people to get a little bit oversaturated and tired. You know, you get fatigued. Um, I think it's very important to have a season break so that way your fans have a chance to miss it, get excited, and be like, "Oh, preseason hype!" You know, and it's like all sorts of marketing opportunities there for you. But you lose some of that when you're just trying to stuff too much all at once. So whatever this league of his ends up becoming, I would advise a clearly defined, erring on the shorter side, maybe 5 to 6 month league. And in terms of the format, I think it would be great if there was kind of the same amount of teams, right? 8 teams maybe. Let's have those be 5 to 6 fencers deep on that team that you can swap out for your 4 person roster. And I would focus heavily on team-based relay events. Individual events are really cool too, but seeing as you're not going to have access in this kind of scenario to the full, 150, fucking 1,000 some odd, like just faces constantly coming into the sport like you do at NAX and stuff. I think it might get a little stale. And also, secondly, the team relay format, first to 45, has a very nice narrative arc to it, and it gives you that feeling of teams and like squad battles. But because the teams are so small, right, it would only be 4 people at a time, and it's individuals fencing. It's very easy to build kind of like narratives and personalities and stuff like that. So not only do you get the best of both worlds, right? You get the team aspect of major sports, and hopefully, they're all dolled up, super swaggy and flashy in their team lames. You know, you got the Rose guys and team executioner, whatever the hell. So that would be really cool. Sell jerseys and stuff. I already covered that. So yeah, I think that would be tight. And then also, uh, PLL kind of took this from NASCAR a little bit in terms of structure, but this is a traveling league, so no one has like got their home field or whatnot. You know, maybe they have like a city and like they're like, oh, we're from this city or whatever, right? But nobody has like a stadium or like a home field advantage, and it kind of creates this like traveling entourage, kind of like oh the medieval theaters in town, that kind of thing. So not only do you not have to spend any money on like infrastructure, like yes, you still have to pay to rent out a field or a venue or whatever, but you're not building anything. That comes way later. That's pretty much, I guess, all I have to say for now is copy the PLL. And just look at how easy the scheduling is to read. You know, the stats are readily available. They have links to the making of and the establishing of the league. So I advise you guys to look into it a little bit more yourself. It's very cool stuff. But yes, closing remarks. I wish this guy Tran all the best. It seems like he's very qualified. I would love to see this succeed. Things that would make a fencing league successful, in my opinion. Everything is my opinion, obviously. Um, you know, quality, aesthetic design to attract sponsors, a small batch teams, right? Maybe 6 deep at a time, 8 teams max. So that way it's never like you're never lost like trying to keep track of anybody. You want it just big enough that there's the drama of upsets and new faces and stuff, but like not so much that you just don't care. Like who watched the Super Bowl yesterday? Like if you're 40, maybe, or if you're a hick, but it's like nobody cares about that anymore. Like it's the time is ripe, I think, for a fencing league. So wish him all the best. Cheers to you, bud.